Now we're pleased to speak with Dr. Tony Agwans, a senior lecturer, Anglia Ruskin University, London, joined us from England. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning, Olumide.
Let's begin with the surgeon who says that 45% of the injured Palestinian civilians were children. And we also have unconfirmed reports that I'm not sure that he's the one or another surgeon, possibly he's the same individual, who says there were over 500 to 700 amputations that were conducted on children as a result of the war between Israel and Hamas. These are the horrors of war. Should the latter information be confirmed to be correct, that's something that will stay with these people for the rest of their lives. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. These are very, very difficult figures to hear. When you look at the report that is coming from Gaza, we are hearing of over 14,000. In some reports, some even said close to 15,000 lives have been lost. A majority are women and children. So it is the pain of war and the devastation that has happened in this crisis that began on October 7th. So
the caveat
from the figures you read out now, you will see that the casualty numbers on a daily basis have been increasing, except for the truce that have just taken place.
Now, the caveat to that, according to Israel, is that these figures should be taken with a pinch of salt because it's not independently verified and it's coming from under the control of Hamas.
Absolutely, yeah. There have been a lot of, opposing views from the Israeli Defense Forces who are saying that the figures are not correct. It's like the Hamas group, they are inflicting it. Nobody can really verify the figures. But when you look at the level of devastation, building collapse, so you will know that there are casualties. But like you said, nobody can actually verify the figures. And then the Israelis will tell you that they lost over 1,200 people on October 7 when that attack took place. So it's a kind of, a tit for tat, but a lot of people are looking at the proportional relationship between the numbers of Israelis that have died and the numbers of, Gazans that have been killed since this crisis began nearly a month plus ago. And then you now look at the humanitarian crisis that is taking place in Gaza and all that. So those are the pains that people in that region are experiencing at the moment.
The ambivalence I felt yesterday personally remains, but possibly overshadowed by the gratitude that 11 more hostages have been released as at today, and the hostage situation with the truce negotiated has been extended by 48 hours into tomorrow. But of that number, of that 11 that were released, 9 were Israeli children with dual Israeli and other nationalities. Now, it begs the question, why Hamas in the first place set about to abduct and take children captive? What do you think was their end game? Because it's not like they're going to run a terrorist daddy daycare and take care of these children who are dependent on care of people. There is a 9-month-old, now a 10-month-old baby that is yet to be released. His name is Kifir, and other children as well that are yet to be released.
Yeah, I think, like we discussed sometime on this program, what Hamas did was, a tactical and strategic move to, take hostages. And it's been the recurring decima when things like this have happened between the Israelis and, any resistant group in Gaza. Even when it was the PLO, it was the same thing. So Hamas deliberately took these hostages, not with the intention of killing them, but to use them as bargaining chips. So if you look at it now, the Israelis are also releasing prisoners a lot of them young people from Israeli prisons back to Hamas. So they knew what they were doing. They knew that they needed to get back at Israel somehow, and that is why they took these hostages since that October 7 attack. I was reading some report yesterday, and from the comment made by some of the released hostages, they were saying that even the head of the Hamas group even met with them in the tunnel and told them that they will not be harmed. So you will see that this was a very well orchestrated plan to get back at Israel, probably get some of their prisoners who are in Israeli jails released. So I think on that point, they have kind of succeeded. And the Israelis, with the pressure that Benjamin Netanyahu and his government have been facing from families of hostages who were taken, they had to accede, to internal pressure and agree to this truce, which is, if we add all the days that it's going to be now, it will be 6 days. So I think the Hamas, they've been able to score a point there.
If you say it's a well-orchestrated plan, then how well-orchestrated is it when you find that Hamas, to their own admission, have said that they do not know the whereabouts of some of the hostages, and that other terrorist groups inside Gaza have captive hostages as well? There was a discourse between them and the Russians, where some Russian Israelis were being found. They say they will look for them. So if it was so well orchestrated, how come it wasn't organized to the point that they would know who they were kidnapping, how many there were? It's still up in the air, the exact number of people that were kidnapped.
Absolutely. And I think, let's not forget that where you have an environment where you have resistant groups, you're going to definitely have some splinter factions, some other mini militia within the main setup. So the possibility is there that some other groups may have also taken opportunity of what has happened to also take hostages. So even why it's very, very difficult for the independent and Western press to actually believe most of the things that the Hamas group, they are saying, it is highly likely that the whereabouts of some of the hostages is not known. And it is also highly probable that some of the hostages may not, even be alive. You remember the issue of the proof of life that was being demanded at some point. And as we speak, that proof of life has not been shown. So all these are the nuances surrounding this hostage situation. And we just hope that whichever group within the splinters or other militia that are operating in Gaza, these hostages are still alive. Like if you notice, the Israeli government have said that for every extra 10 hostage that is released, that it will add an extra day to the humanitarian truce. So let's hope that all these hostages will get back safely, and then the exchange of prisoners and hostages between both sides will continue, and eventually we'll have a ceasefire.
It's a good thing to hope for. On the point of proof of life, it was bizarre that 2 individuals that were previously told by Hamas to the IDF and to the families of the hostages that were dead were found to be alive. And at least one that was thought to be alive was found to be dead. But let's now bring into this conversation the picture of the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, who've been criticized by Israel as being partisan, as being not fair in their estimation of what's going on between Israel and Hamas. In the case where we saw an individual from, an official from UNICEF who was describing the very dire situations in Gaza and how it continues to affect children, there was no such hue and cry on the October 7 massacre about the children that were kidnapped, that were taken, that were abused, and the babies that were beheaded, the children that were burnt alive. According to the IDF, there was no such hue and cry from UNICEF at that time. So that continues to deepen the schism between Israel and the United Nations.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. When you look at this crisis, my personal opinion has always been, I've always applied the law of cause and effect. So I believe that if we didn't have the scenario that played out on October 7th at the Negev Desert during that music festival, we will not be even having this conversation now. This huge loss of life that we have witnessed in the last 7-8 weeks will not have happened. So, and I think that as people, talk about this crisis, as people, push their narrative as far as this crisis is concerned, I believe that we should start it from what happened on October 7th. Was it justified or was it not? So it is only when that conversation begins from that point, that is when I think we'll have a proper humanitarian perspective to this whole crisis. Because people seem to just condemn Israel, to say, oh, look at the devastation, look at they want to, destroy Gaza and all that. But they don't really look at what caused this in the first place. And that is what you have actually alluded to. Because some of the optics that we saw between October 7, 8, and 9 were really gory. For some of us, it was really hard to watch. So people should understand that. And I think, to be honest, a lot of the United Nations officials have been really, really sympathetic, when you listen to their speech, right from the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. So they seem to be very sympathetic towards the, Palestinian cause. But experts have always contended that people should not just be looking at the Palestinian cause. They should also try to sift Hamas as a militia. Hamas has been designated by a lot of the Western countries to be an Israel as a terrorist nation, as a terrorist group. So people should see it like that. And then that will help in shaping the perspective they give. So because nobody can justify what the Hamas group did on October 7th. It cannot be justified. Although some will say, oh, Israel, they are occupying their territory and all that. That is another argument that is very widespread. But we can't justify, no one can justify what happened there. So the whole situation is a kind of a reprisal from the Israeli Defense Forces. And Israel will always justify what they are doing, when they went for an all-out attack in Gaza.
You raise an important point when you talk about how the Palestinians and Hamas should be perceived as whether one and the same or not. Obviously, they are not the same, and there are people and Palestinians who possibly do not approve of the methods of Hamas' proclivity for violence. But how can you do that and also bring in the Palestinian Liberation Authority, and where the citizens of Palestine stand with the view of the indoctrination that many Palestinians, of whom the median age is in their 20s and in their 30s, consider Hamas as being the only solution to the problem that they have with Israel?
Yeah, I think that what you have said now is very true. And that is where the international community really need to step in. Let me use this point to, really congratulate, the Qataris, for what they have done. If you notice this truce that is being enjoyed now, Qatar has been at the forefront, supported by Egypt. They've really played, a good mediator role in this truce. So the international community need to step in. It's not all Palestinians that support the Hamas group. Years ago, it was the PLO, led by the late Yasser Arafat, that was the leader of Palestine. So now, since 2006 or 2007, the Hamas group, took over the Gaza Strip, and there's been very violent. And the thing with Hamas is that they do not recognize that Israel should exist, and everybody should understand that. So, and they are supported by Iran as well. So these are the problems. So I think the United Nations, the US, UK, European Union, even China, and other, superpowers in the world, they should really step in and see how both sides can be brought together. Talking of Palestine now, Palestinian Authority, because they have a president, Mahmoud Abbas. He just seemed to, be there, and we don't really hear much about him. And the Hamas group seems to be the one running the show. That should not be.
Indeed. And we are grateful, obviously, for these 2 days of the extended pause in fighting, and we certainly hope for more. And we indeed thank you for making out the time to be with us on the program this morning. Dr. Tony Agwans, a senior lecturer, Anglia Ruskin University, London, joined us from the UK. Many thanks.
Thank you, and have a nice day.